Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for the 5 games I played this last week that are just for 2 players. These are games that are designed for, again, just 2 players. And I think they're really cool and very different from each other. So the way that I'm going to organize this list is by starting with the games that I am least likely to return to the most likely I want to return to. And this is a really personal list, and so it just absolutely is tailored to my tastes and the way I want to play and the kinds of games I want to play. And it's also based on my experience playing these games. Do they fit with my style and my temperament? I will let you know. So the very first game that I'd like to start with is Nagaraja. This game I was really excited to try because it does something that I kind of like, which is press your luck. In Nagaraja, players are exploring their own personal board, which is a temple, and they're looking for relics. Now, to get to these relics, players are going to be bidding on rooms that they get to add to their space. There's a 3x3 grid of just empty, cavernous temple space that you have to make paths through to reach these relics. And when you get to the relic, you will turn it over. They're all face down and you don't know where the relics are. The relics range from value 3 to 5 if they are good relics, and if they're evil relics, they have a value of 6. Now, there's this kind of press your luck with that, because if you get all 3, if you flip over all 3 of your evil tiles that are value 6, you lose automatically. And so you have to be really careful about trying to get to or exceed the 25-point threshold to win the game. The game itself is played with these really cool fate sticks, and I like that. I think they're really fun. They are of varying length and have different depictions on them. So you might actually have the Naga symbol, which allows you to activate cards on your turn, or they might just have dots on them, which is your value of power that you have to win the room tile for that particular turn. There are also amulets that give you a certain boost or a cool strategy that helps you respond to the other player or take a really cool turn. So the game works well as this resource game because you have a certain number of cards, and when you don't win the bid for the room tile, you actually get some cards that gives you hopefully a boost for the very next turn so that you can come back stronger than ever. And there's a little bit of this push and pull, but it's not the same kind of push and pull that I feel is just kind of like a tug of war with like a rope across the line. I think Nagaraja really has some great mechanics and some great ideas. I just think that for me, sometimes the swings in it can just be a little much. I felt like I was planning a lot and trying to do my best, and in some games I was just flipping over the cursed relics and losing the game, or I was just too slow to get to things and my opponent was getting the rooms every single time. And even though I was supposed to be getting cards and getting stronger, they stayed as strong as they were and just kept getting the rooms, which let them reveal their relics and gain their 25 points well before me. So I like it, and I like the sticks, I like the fate sticks ideas, and I like rolling different kinds of dice. They were really interesting and I liked the way that they functioned. But overall, when I put it together and I think about my experience playing it, it's not one that I want to return to as much as I do the upcoming 4 2-player games that I've got on my list. Alright, the next game that I played just for 2 players is Mandala. Yeah, this game I was really interested in. I saw a preview forever ago, it seems like, on Shut Up and Sit Down, and I thought, wow, Quinn's is really pushing this. So let's find out what's in Mandala. The idea of placing cards from your hand into one of 2 different spaces is really cool. You place a card in the center if you want to gain more cards to your hand. And then the other choice is to place cards on the bottom of your side, which allows you to strengthen essentially your side of that mandala. Now, here's another cool thing. There are 2 mandalas. You have 2 of them going at the same time, and so you're looking at what's available for you to place in the center on the one on your right or the one on your left, and you're really trying to figure out what to play. There are 3 areas essentially in each mandala. Your player area, the mountain, which is the center, and then your opponent's player area. Now, you want essentially there to be all 6 colors represented in one mandala for essentially the triggering of destroying that mandala. That means that it's going to be scored, and you're going to get cards, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Now, you kind of have to keep track of all of those things while you're also keeping track of the other mandala at the same time and maximizing where you place your cards from your hand. So once a player has played that last color into one of the areas, the mandalas, it's going to be scored. And the player who has the majority on the player side, essentially, they are going to be able to take from the center first. And they can take all of one color, and what you do is you take all of those cards and you get to place them into your cup, which is your scored area. Now, if you haven't got that color depicted on your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are your score multipliers, you will place the card there first. And then you will place, if any, remaining into your cup. Now, what that means is at the end of the game, everything in your cup will score points according to what number that color is sitting beside. So if you place your very first, you get a red card and you place it in the 1, every red you place into your cup from that point on is worth 1 point. Now, I think this game is very interesting. I think it's really clean. I think it's relatively easy to understand, but for some reason it just misses my mark. I don't know, like there's just something about it that maybe it's just one step too many for my brain, and it just makes me feel like I am always one step behind. And so when I feel like I'm one step behind, I feel like I can't stay ahead of the game, like literally. And so it makes it just really challenging for me to get into this game. Probably just requires more and more plays. I've given it a handful of times to really, let it sink in, and I just still find it maybe just a little bit too much for me, but I do like it, and I think it's really good, and I think it's super smart. The draw of the cards can be a little iffy at times because you really need something and you don't get it. There is a way in this game to get cards if you're really having a hard time getting the variety or the kind of card you need, but it requires that you do that as your turn while your opponent may not need to. And so I still feel like there's a penalty in just getting the luck of the draw, and if you don't get the luck you want, you have to take another turn to get it, and I'm kind of like not a fan of that. So that's something that kind of keeps me back a little bit with Mandala. So moving on to my third most likely to return to two-player game. It's a word game and is one of the games that I picked up in my Target haul. It is a little wordy. Yeah, this is a sneaky tile game for aspiring geniuses and would-be wizards. It's definitely very playful and something that I think works really well as a two-player word game. I think it's pretty hard to make word games or communication games just for two players, and I think this game does it incredibly well. It is a race, but it's a race that you really don't know if you're going to finish first until the last minute. And I thought the games that I played with this, we were going back and forth, and some games seemed like one player was way ahead, and honestly, they weren't. It was really cool. So the way this game works is that players will draw from a bag a certain number of consonants and a certain number of vowels, and they will place those behind their player board, and they will look at all of those letters and try to spell a word. They just need to spell one word. Now, this word can be long, it can be short, it can be complex, it can be easy, it can be well-known, rare, who knows? But you are picking a word that you want your opponent to not immediately get right away. So you don't want it to be like too rare, because then it might be super easy to figure out because it's got a lot of strange letters in it. But if it's too easy or short, then they might actually get it because it's pretty common and it comes to mind. So after you've selected your word, you are going to write it down and fold over the flap so that they don't know what the word is, and you'll pass them all of the letters and your board. And then the rest of the game is essentially you asking questions and honing and getting information about your opponent's word, what letters exist in the word, repetitions, associations, and there are all kinds of cards you can use that cost you points. Now, these point values essentially charge you for asking for really helpful information or maybe general kind of not so helpful information, but it's still good. So it's of less value, which means that's why it costs less for points. So let's say I get my opponent's word. If I have spent fewer points and I guess their word before they guess my word, I win straight up. But let's say I spent more point value getting better intel and I guess their word, but I have more points. They essentially get to continue playing to beat me points-wise. So it's not done by turns, it's done by how much value of information you get or give. And I think that's pretty cool. It went back and forth. I thought it was really fun to come up with words, and I thought it was great to just kind of like think how my opponent thought, and I had a really good time with it. So I think that a little wordy is quite good, and like I said, it's pretty rare to have just a two-player, built for two-player, communicative word game, and I think a little wordy just does it. I think they do it well, and there's a card that I took out of the game because it's just a little bit too helpful. It's the sounds like. You essentially have to give someone what your word sounds like, and so we kind of just took that out of the game because it gives you way too much information. But you can choose which cards you want to use, which cards you don't want to use, and of the values, you can essentially give a variety of values for the points that it takes to get those clues from your opponent. It's super replayable, and I really like it. All right, we're moving into the top 2 of my two-player games that I really enjoyed. This one is also from my Target haul. It is, 60 Second City. This is a two-player collaborative game, and let me tell you all about it. So the 60 seconds in the 60 Second City title refers to each of the rounds. There are 5 rounds in the game, so technically takes you 5 minutes to play. There's a little bit of setup and there's some cleanup and setup for each round. This game will not take you more than 20-25 minutes max. You are working together to build this city every round based on the goal cards. And you reveal goal cards at the beginning of the round, but you only clear them at the end of the round if you satisfied the expectations. So if you actually completed what's on the card, you get to take it out, and usually you get some kind of bonus. Each round in 60 Second City, players are drawing tiles and adding them to a central player board area, which is a grid. That's your city. Now, where do you put those tiles? You have to place them adjacent to the city center or adjacent to an existing tile. So there are some restrictions there. And you only get to do one hand, so you have to put your other hand behind your back. So you're only allowed to do one at a time, and you have to place it before you draw a new one. In addition, you're trying to complete these goals that you have flipped over at the start of each round. You determine the difficulty of the game by just adding or subtracting goal cards. And so in 5 rounds, you are trying to get through your stack of goal cards, and you only essentially clear them when you finish them from the previous round when you score. This is collaborative, so you're working together, you are trying to talk to each other the whole time. I'll tell you, a minute goes by super fast, but it's fun and it's exciting, and you're working together and you're trying to juggle so many things at once. So the game is scalable. You can add events if you think things are just a little bit too easy. Events really throw a wrench in the game, and I think that this game is super replayable. I'll give you a tip. Definitely keep track of the pollution tiles because they are going to block your board up, and certain goal cards are going to allow you to remove pollution so that you don't get kind of blocked off of making certain configurations with your tiles. Okay, it's time for my most likely to play again two-player game, it is the game, Face to Face. This is a two-player The Game. If you're familiar with the game, this is the game for 2 players only, and I have to say it works incredibly well. There is a feature to it that is interesting. Obviously, you are not working together in face-to-face. In the game, the original, you are all working together to discard all of your cards into the ascending or descending piles, going from 1 to 100 or 100 down to 1. In this game, you have 1 pile going up, 1 pile going down. Your opponent has 1 pile going up and 1 pile going down, and you can play in your stacks or you can play in your opponent's stacks. This is so cool. It's a cool feature. It's really fun. Now, you have to play at least 2 cards on your turn, and you can play them exclusively into your own space, or you can play 1 into your opponent and only 1, and then any remaining cards on your side if you play more than 2. When you play on your opponent's side, you have to make it better. That's the rule. Like, it's just so cool. Like, you don't want to help your opponent. You don't want to make it easier for them to play. But at the same time, it could be really advantageous for you, because if you play more than 2 cards on your turn and you only play in your space, you're only drawing 2 cards back up into your hand. So your amount of choice might dwindle if you don't play on your opponent's side. Now, if you play on your opponent's side, you get to draw back up to your card hand limit, which is 6. And so there are really specific, clear rewards for going in your opponent's space, even though it helps them, and your cards might actually really demand that. It might actually be wholly advantageous for you to do something like that. The same rules apply with the 10 jump rule. You can go back in time, or you can go whichever direction you want to go in the opposite direction if it's in increments of 10, and that's again just still such a stinking clever cheat rule that of course is built into the game, but it allows you to really strategically revitalize one of your stacks. This game ends in one of 2 ways. Someone gets rid of all of their cards, or the opponent can't play at least 2 cards on their turn, in which you win the game. That's cool. I love it. And I think that every time I've played this, it's been the opponent can't play at least 2 cards on their turn. And I think it's fun because there's a little bit of this race. There's a race feature of, can I play faster than my opponent but not get myself all clogged up and have my rows go too far up and too far down to where I can't play anywhere, even on my opponent's side. And so this is a fast and fun version of the game that's competitive and built exactly for 2 players. It is a great game, it is a solid game, it's a fast game, and if you're familiar with the game, you will enjoy Face to Face. So that's my list of 5 2-player games that I played this last week in the order of when I'm going to play it again, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below, because like I said, some of these games I can tell, I know they're good, they just don't work for me. And I hope that my explanation of them helps you understand them better to see if they might actually work for you. I would recommend all 5 of these games for a variety of reasons. It's just that personally, they may not necessarily really strike that chord for me the way that my top 2 or 3 really do in this. So enjoy playing with your loved one in a 2-player game built just for 2. I'll see you next time.